either live by the gun or you die by the sword.
Welcome to the Good, the Bad, and the Weird MicroViews. I'm Nico.
And I'm Chris.
And do you hear that sound, Chris?
Yeah.
The ringing of sleigh bells?
Yeah.
No, it isn't Santa here to deliver packages. That's the sound of Santa needing to get married.
I thought you were going to say it's the sound of Alan the Toolman coming to haunt my nightmares.
It was between getting married or getting laid. One of the two.
Yeah, well, I understand.
That's right. We're doing Santa Claus 2 today.
Which, as we all know, I hate Tim Allen. Not because he's a bad actor or because he's done anything terribly egregious. I just don't like how he looks or sounds.
I know.
It's a purely aesthetical choice. I will, however, say that Santa Claus 2, which is not only a holiday movie, but a holiday movie sequel, which are notoriously the worst versions of any holiday movie.
Unless it's Beauty and the Beast 2.
Which is not technically the sequel of a Christmas movie. It just happens to be the Christmas movie. That one is good.
The Christmas sequel to the original.
And that one is good. That organ, fantastic.
Mm-hmm.
Goosebumps. This one's not bad. I did not fully despise... Okay, I've seen this movie several times.
Yeah,
Let's be very clear.
Yeah,
I'm
let's be
not
honest.
new to the Santa Claus 2. I've seen all of them. You own it now twice.
Have you seen the TV show yet?
No.
There's a TV show.
Of course there's a TV show.
But I think it's only on Disney Plus, so you might not be spared.
Well, we will see if I watch it. I don't have a great deal of love in my heart for the Santa Claus franchise. However, if I am forced to watch one of the Santa Clauses, this one is for me the most fun, because this one enters a lot of the questions into the Santa Claus world that I already have as a viewer.
Yeah.
That the Santa Claus 1 and Santa Claus 3 blatantly ignore.
Mm-hmm.
Santa Claus 2 is forced to deal with the fact that Santa Claus is a normal man who has a son and a separate family, and now has to get married to a woman who is a normal woman. But also needs to become Mrs. Claus.
Yeah, and there's a lot of other stuff in this. I have questions because I don't think anyone... None of the
There's no answers, just so you know.
Well, part of it, I think, is partially because it's written by Don Reimer,
Yeah.
Chino Paul, Can Dario, Ed Decker, and John J. Strauss, and directed by Michael Lembeck, which, other than the cast, none of the original writers or directors came back.
I believe this is also the director's directorial debut, I think. Which, if it is, not a terrible start, but also...
hell, look at Con Air.
Yeah, look at it.
I don't know, this isn't Lembeck's first one. He directed Friends.
Oh, good for him.
Well, but that's TV.
That's TV. I think this might be the movie debut for him.
Oh, let me look. Oh, he did the Tooth Fairy Rock, which might tie into one of my theories I have about this movie.
Okay.
He did a handful of TV movies, so...
A lot of TV movies. This one never was on TV as, just for TV. This was always meant to be owned in the home.
Yeah, it was originally for theaters to begin with.
It was in theaters. In case anyone's wondering, it did okay. It did make money.
Mm-hmm.
It did make a lot of money, but it made enough for Tim Allen to come back.
Yes. Which it stars Tim Allen as Santa or Scott Calvin.
Of course it does.
Elizabeth Mitchell as Carol.
She's back.
And Eric Lloyd as Charlie Calvin.
Yes. And also, I believe everyone's favorite elf, he also is back, for those of you who love him. I know there is a large fan following of that specific elf.
Bernard.
I know that there's now, people who grew up with a crush on him who have now grown up and are now, huge fans of Bernard.
Portrayed by David Krumholtz.
Thank you. I could not remember his name.
Isadora Rabi and Oppenheimer.
Yes, for those who didn't follow his career outside of the Santa Claus franchise. And I know that, he has a cult following specifically for the Santa Claus movies. So, in case that was, dear to you, he is back. Mm-hmm. And honestly, he plays a little bit more of a role this time.
He's back. He's never stopped. He's been continuously working.
Oh, no, it's just, he looks so different when he's not wearing this stupid elf costume.
And when he's not
playing
a high schooler.
Yeah. Oh, no, his face changed, I think, at least in my opinion, quite a bit from high school to adulthood.
Yeah, he's Goldstein in Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay.
That's a good one. I do think, though, if you are Bernard the elf lover, he has a bigger role this time. I enjoyed the shenanigans because it kind of plays off of his, slightly more mature than everyone else at the, North Pole vibes.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing, like, so with this one, I do enjoy the start of it. It's cute and silly and reintroducing the North Pole with some, by now, bad CGI. I mean,
they expand it. We get more fake set.
Yeah, and we have kind of an actual town and city, whereas in the last movie, we saw the warehouse.
And that was kind of it.
Well, and a view from the window.
Oh, I forgot about the window scene. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
No, this one elaborates more on it. I know there is, like, some people who specifically follow North Pole design and architecture. Good for you. Too far for me. But I know that, like, this is, like, the leading point. The third one has the most from the fans of the architectural Santa Claus fandom.
Oh, the third one.
Which maybe one day we'll touch on.
I'm sorry to my childhood friend John. We took him to
see it live?
To see it in theaters. To be fair, we were visiting from Italy. We didn't have commercials.
And also, like, back then, you kind of assumed you were going to see a bad Christmas film in theaters. That was kind of like the thing to do, let's be real. I saw a lot of bad Christmas films for the sake of it was the only open thing to do on Christmas.
No, we went to it not thinking like maybe it'd be as good as the second one.
Oh, well, I'm so sorry. Because the second one, again, not bad, but not great. It's passable. No. I would have paid back in the day the $5 entry fee. Mm-hmm. It's not worth the $15 today, but maybe matinee.
Yeah, no, and I agree with how it sets up everything and really gets you back into the world and expands on it. Yes. There are just some stupid things of like, is the toy really that loud that an aircraft can pick it up on radar or radio?
There's so many questions that the first movie introduced. So the first one introduced questions like, if Santa Claus is just a dude, how does that work? It kind of explained it, but it also definitely didn't. Mm-hmm. It tried to explain Santa Claus magic by, like, loosely just having Bernard walk him through nonsense. And once again, Bernard is here, because remember, this is a pun movie, and there's a small, tiny font that says you have to get married.
Yeah. Well, it's also a way to introduce a third in command, the elf Curtis, who is, in my opinion, quite annoying.
I agree, but, oh well.
Yeah, as well as the young comedic Jar Jar Reindeer himself in training, Chet.
I hate Chet.
I do too. Well, but that's the thing, is like the first one was a relatively serious movie for the type of comedy it was, whereas this one gets a little bit more on the slapstick, like haha, or more catering towards the children's side, where you have Chet, who the kids are supposed to laugh with, and Curtis, who kids are supposed to be more associated with compared to like Bernard, because we don't have Charlie as a kid anymore that the kids are supposed to relate to. We need someone new-ish, even though Curtis is like 800 years old as well.
Yeah, good point. The other thing to remember is, like, Santa Claus 1 was definitely meant for, like, the whole family to go see at Christmas time. Santa Claus 2, even in its advertisement, was, like, directly like, did your children like the first movie? Time to take them to the second one. Like, this wasn't for adults. This was a movie directly targeted at, do you need to entertain your children? You won't die if you watch this one.
Another one I wouldn't know because I was living in Germany when this one came out, and we didn't have trailers or commercials, so
this one was on TV. This commercial was on TV so much. I distinctly remember watching the commercial for this one. It had a lot of emphasis on like zooming into the fine detail about needing to get married in under a year.
Yeah.
And like de-Santifying him, and then like I don't know, I think the commercial even like briefly was like, and his children are bad. Santa's children on the naughty list?
Well, exactly. As a marketing ploy, I think that's actually a pretty good thing to do, just to be like, hey, look, the story's advanced. It's not just a sequel. It makes it a little bit more interesting of like, hey, time's advanced.
Yep.
Stakes are a little higher. Yep. Now he has to get married. On top of that, he's having issues with his son.
Yeah, no, like, from a marketing standpoint, this movie makes perfect sense. And like, granted, it worked. This movie made money, and it made enough for there to be a third one, and now apparently a TV series.
Yeah.
It also hit a bunch of the tropes that from, like, 2000 to, like, I would argue all the way up to 2010 was a big theme in, like, are you trying to market to the young teen audience and having a hard time? Put in fairy tale creatures, like the Easter Bunny, the Tooth Fairy. There was several movies that all fell into this category, and I'm not sure why, but it did work.
Here's what my theory is.
Okay.
So while at the time I did like I still kind of do like the Council of Legendary Figures.
I do too.
It's fun, and I think, I don't know, it feels like a weird hodgepodge for this group to be thrown together, but...
Yeah.
and seeing that the director went on to direct a movie called The Tooth Fairy featuring The Rock,
Yeah.
I can guarantee you, because this was a sequel and potentially world building,
Yeah.
it was all to set up potential spin-offs for all these fun and quirky characters like, oh, what's the Tooth Fairy gonna do?
100%.
What's the Easter Bunny?
And granted, I don't think that Santa Claus 2 succeeded in its collecting of the mythical creatures.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you're going to look at a movie that did it well, clearly Rise of the Guardian was the superior movie. That one managed to get them all together, it made each one of them interesting and funny, and it managed to make Hot Topic a place to shop for that stuff. And if you can get the Hot Topic kids, you have the entire teen market.
I've still never seen The Guardians.
It's one of those movies that's okay. It had a chokehold on the 13-year-old version of us because it was targeted for us, it was aimed at us, and it was advertised like hell to us. So we liked it, just the same way we all were into Nightmare Before Christmas for a while.
Yeah, well, and also them getting together this cast of extended universe characters makes me question some stuff, because they said that children are 86% happier now that he's the new Santa.
That does bring into questions about the previous Santa.
Yeah, so there's like stats for them being good or bad at their job, and so like was the last Santa shitty, or was he just dealing with 90s kids who like couldn't get Game Boys and shit?
Okay, so that's one of the things where like I have questions about how the Santa Claus works that we asked in the first movie, and they were never answered because it's a Santa Claus movie starring Tim Allen. And my question re-arises. Most children, granted, this is a holiday movie, the idea that you're supposed to actually believe in Santa is like part of the plot, but most children, to some extent, understand that like Santa brings them toys from Toys R Us or Walmart or Target or wherever. And so like, was it just a bad last decade worth of toys? Like they just nobody wanted to skip it? Or was it like, wow, we only rated... Like, wow, this Santa Claus just didn't deliver toys to people. Like, what does... If they had the last Santa Claus die at the end of, like, the Great Depression, and then a different Santa Claus, if the stat had to do with, like, the global economics at the time, then it would have been clever and punny, and the adults would have giggled a little bit. But they don't. Tim Allen's, like, is in the middle of a normal, like, economic boom. So, like, I don't understand why the last Santa Claus failed so much. Was he just... mad and sad?
I don't know. I think it's a line to... I think what it really is, it's one of our dumb conspiracy theories, but I think what it is it's a line that's put in there to give Scott Calvin, aka the Santa Claus, a reason to come back of like, hey, your job here, or give him an importance in the North Pole. It's not just that he's Santa Claus, because we know when he dies, someone else is going to inherit it.
True.
But, well, actually, Charlie says he wants to take over the family business, but it also gives him an importance of, like, hey, you're not just Santa Claus. You're a good Santa Claus. You're better than the last Santa Claus. Okay,
so actually, I'm now remembering, this is going to sound really stupid, I'm now remembering an interview with Tim Allen that I watched for the Santa Clauses, and I'm, like, 90% sure that the original pitch for Santa Claus 2 was that Santa Claus works too hard, and he needs a Mrs. Claus to help him balance his work life. And I bet this is a remnant of that original draft of like, he's too hardworking and thus he needs someone to help him loosen up.
AKA Santa needs to get laid.
Which does, yeah, I think that's why they scrapped it. I think they were, this is how about we just say he needs a Mrs. Claus because that's how the story goes.
Santa needs that mistletoe.
But okay, like if you think about it from that perspective, some of the nonsense does kind of make sense. Why they've like worded certain pieces the way they did. Why he's neglected his favorite child. Well, like, and like not neglected, but like also his son is having a hard time dealing with the fact his dad is fucking Santa Claus. He hardly sees him.
Well, no, it's not even that. So like, here's the thing with Charlie. Yeah. I rewatching this as an adult. The Charlie subplot of this, because let's be honest,
it's a subplot.
Charlie's just a MacGuffin to get Santa Claus, Santa Claus back to the USA.
Yeah, 100%.
The whole thing about it coming down to he's frustrated he can't tell people his dad is Santa Claus. Imagine how much bullying he would deal with for admitting that, oh yeah, my dad's Santa Claus. Of course he is. Yeah, sure.
Yeah, because again, remember that this isn't like a world where all children up into a certain age believe in Santa Claus. This is a normal world where nobody actually believes in Santa Claus.
Yeah, well, and
this isn't Buddy the Elf. Like, if we sing Christmas songs, Santa flies. Like, that's not the case here.
Well, and on top of that, they completely neglect the one big thing he's given at the end of Santa Claus 1. It comes up almost towards the end of the movie where
it does.
It's this, he uses a snow globe to prove to his principal that it's like, hey, by the way, my dad's real. If you shake it, it tells him that, hey, I need you, or I miss you. And you know what? They never talk about using that. It's like he forgot that it even existed.
It's literally only there to get the two characters back together.
Yeah.
That's it. That's the only reason it's there. And that is very stupid, and also, like, they made up this snow globe so, like, they could have also given him other magical things so he could talk to his dad. Like, I don't know, a magical satellite phone.
Yeah, I mean,
like, there's so many options to, like, rework the Charlie, like, bit that don't add questions to this plot.
Yeah, no, exactly. The Charlie bit is the dumbest bit to this movie. And even like, oh, I thought Charlie Sheen straightened out. It's like, why would Charlie Sheen be on the naughty or nice list? Like,
yeah, it doesn't tie in anything. There's no jokes for the adults to enjoy, and it's not interesting enough of a plotline for most kids to be, like, invested.
Yeah, it's not clever like how Shrek does the whole O.J. Simpson chase.
Yes. It ignores any, like, real-life, like, tie-in.
Yeah, just Charlie Sheen, which means Santa Claus is delivering Christmas presents to Charlie Sheen every year.
Which does also beg the question, like, at what age does Santa Claus cut you off? Because Charlie Sheen's not a child?
I don't know how old he is in this, but I guarantee you it's past his drug phase.
It's old enough to not be getting gifts from Santa, I think. But, like, yeah. I don't know. Charlie gets gifts from Santa, and he's old enough that most kids probably don't.
Yeah.
So, like, there's so much question. Like, if you just believe in Santa, do you keep getting gifts? Because if so, there's some adults out there who have, like, definitely found that loophole.
There is that one stupid Christmas rom-com movie, I Believe in Santa, about a guy who wholeheartedly believes that Santa's still alive, or Santa's a real being. And that movie, watching it, you're thinking, oh, maybe he is actually Santa Claus, and that's why he still believes in himself, weirdly enough. Nope, he is just a man in his 40s who believes that Santa Claus is real.
But how funny would it be if they had taken that and, like, looped it so that, like, there's, like, Bigfoot hunters, but for Santa, because they fully believe that Santa is real, because they keep getting presents every year, because if you believe, you get presents.
Yeah, that actually would have been a fun plot for, like, the third movie to bring that in.
Nope, we're gonna have Jack Frost in the third one, and he's the most asshole.
Well, and he's not part of the he's not the Legendary Council. I do have a question about, like, how they chose this Legendary Council. Was it just, like, ones that they could get licensing for,
yes,
or, like, weren't gonna potentially run against copyright strikes with, like, Lucky Charms or some shit?
Yeah, 100%, because they're picking ones that if you look at all of, like, the options, all of the characters, with the exception of Santa Claus, who we all know was invented by the Coca-Cola Company, all of the characters they pick, so Mother Nature, Father Time, Cupid, Easter Bunny, Tooth Fairy, and Sandman, all of them are creatures that are much older than standard marketing and, like, fairy tale lore. But honestly, Santa, because of the Coca-Cola Company, is the only one that we interact with normally. The Tooth Fairy is fun for maybe the first 4 teeth of a child. Some families do it all the way, but I know it's not, like, a universal thing. The rest of them are just vague references.
Yeah, imagine if they replaced the Easter Bunny with Jesus Christ.
I mean, honestly, there'd been more lore there to deal with, because there's not, like, songs and stories with the Easter Bunny in it, really, and, like, Cupid isn't really a actual character. It's like a idea in Romanesque and old
Greek
paintings.
mythology.
Yeah, like, and it's been and, like, the one that they're talking about's not even, like, the one guy. It's, like, the Cupid's little babies that shoot arrows.
Yeah.
Not even the same Cupid.
What about the Sandman? Is he bringing dreams of men?
Also, like, which version of Sandman? Just the guy who puts, like, grits in your eyes, or, like, the one that actually, like, brings, like, good dreams?
Or Spider-Man 3's Sandman. Oh.
Yeah, like, yeah. No, like, these are all very vague legends and old stories that most people don't have, like, current songs or stories. Again, with the exception of Santa Claus, who, thanks to the Coca-Cola Company, we have some.
Bring the Wicker Man back into this.
I mean, it kind of does. It's trying to tie Santa Claus back into, like, older religions and, like, thought processes. But unfortunately, this is the Santa Claus 2, and nobody cares. Nobody has time for this. And also, like I said, if you want, like, lore of old creatures, let's be real, Rise of the Guardians did it better because at least all of those characters had personalities and traits and were in the movie. This movie is like, yeah, look at all these cool guys. None of them matter. Whoop.
Except for the Tooth Fairy, who actually has a little bit more personality than the others.
Literally, it's just the Tooth Fairy.
And he's only there as a way to get them back to the North Pole.
Which is the stupidest one, because, like, clearly the Easter Bunny can teleport. Why not just use him?
Yeah.
No, like, it's kind of lazy, but I get it. It was popular at the time. It, like, made sense to match in with the Santa Claus lore. They were trying to expand the world. They knew they were going to do a third one by the time they were done filming this one. Like, they didn't even wait for the box office. They were, like, also announcing the third one. I think it was even in some of the Burger King, like, ads at the time.
I'm gonna say no to that, because Santa Claus 3 was 4 years later.
It was. They had already, like, started, like, announcing that they were going to do it.
Yeah.
Like, they didn't leave much question. Like, even before they had finished writing the second one, they had already, like, started, like, putting out promo
It just got stuck in development hell for a little bit.
It did. And Santa Claus 3, they timed out because, of course, they did. I have no doubt in my mind that the story changed drastically after receiving the reviews from this one, because the third one's all about Jack Frost, who's not in this movie, but probably should have been if you think about it.
Yeah.
So, like, but they definitely were advertising it. It was, like, already a thing of, like, get ready for the second one in the long line of Santa Claus movies. And then they never made a fourth one.
Shocking.
I know.
But so with all this setup, I do like the idea of the Mrs. Claus. I think it's a nice nod to some of the Santa Claus stories that people have brought up and created over the years.
It rounds out the character more.
But it does, and I mean, it's good, there's good stakes, but it does bring up some questions.
Mm-hmm.
When he killed the last Santa Claus, did he also kill the last Mrs. Claus?
Apparently, yes, because that guy had been doing it for, what did they say, 80 years? Or something like that?
Something.
It was long enough that he would have had to have found a Mrs. Claus due to the fine print in the document he signs.
Yeah, but why not just add that? Actually,
why not have that Mrs. Claus?
Well, because it's the 2000s. You can't have Mrs. Claus remarrying the new killer of her husband.
That'd be weird. And also, this movie does go kind of to a lot of lengths to reprove to you that Tim Allen is not, in fact, the old man that is Santa Claus. Mm-hmm. Don't forget, he's actually Tim Allen, and he's young and moderately handsome, much like his wife, and then they just turn into old people.
Yeah, but, like also, if he gives up, does some random dude get to be Santa, or does the next in command elf, does Bernard get to be the next Santa?
I don't think Bernard wants to be Santa.
Bernard doesn't want to be Santa. He's told Santa multiple times in the first movie, that's not my job.
Yeah, passionately enough that, I think Bernard would probably kill himself if he became Santa.
Or does Charlie take over the family business like he wanted in the first movie, which is...
We still don't know if he can do that, by the way.
By the rules of this, technically he can. If he puts on the cloak and the old Santa goes away, Charlie is the new Santa.
True, but that does mean that his dad has to die within walking distance of Charlie because he doesn't have a car.
Yeah. Is Scott Calvin going to outlive Charlie?
Yes, by a lot.
Or is he going to give up? Or is it when Charlie's on his deathbed, be like, boom, you get to live longer?
But is that living? Because in theory, they keep re-hinting that inside the Santa Claus magic suit is just normal Tim Allen. Which does imply that the exterior of Santa is a magical guise.
So then does Santa have a natural lifespan of 80 or 75 to 90 years or something?
I do think the first one talked about how long some of the Santas made it, and I do remember some of those lasting a very long time. So again, this world has no rules. It makes no sense, because it would make more sense for a Santa to have a normal human lifespan and then be replaced, because then at least the adult man who takes his place would be in touch with the current economics, times, toy interests of children. Because, granted, and this Santa puts in a lot of effort, he builds an entire lab, I think it's, like, mentioned that he, like, builds a research lab so we can make Game Boys and bullshit, and Pokemans, but...
Don't let Nintendo know, they'll sue the shit out of you.
Yeah, like, I feel like, even if you do that, you still cannot possibly know what the trends of children are.
Yeah.
You have to, like, interact with some of them to know, because no one could possibly have told you that the hot new toy of the year is a man's head in a toilet that spins and says skibbity.
Oh.
But it's physical now, you can buy it! No one could have possibly predicted the chokehold that slime would have on middle school children. No one could have predicted that. Santa Claus himself could not have known. So, like, it would make sense for every 80 years or so for the Santa to die, so that way you're not getting yo-yos. Because no child nowadays, except for us nerds, wants yo-yos.
Well, this Santa's now gotta last at least, or doesn't last more than 10 years.
Yeah.
Because everything changes a lot quicker than it did when we were
Yeah, maybe
kids.
we need to start, like, having more frequent Santas. Do Santas now only live 20 years at best? Like, the lifespan of Santa is slowly going down.
Yeah. Well, and on top of this, so we also get this dilemma of, what are the elves going to do when Santa's gone?
Which they do find. I like this loophole. I think this side plot is more interesting than his son's side plot.
Yeah.
Because it's like the weird, stupid, magical Christmas movie bullshit that I expect.
Mm-hmm.
So it feels charming in that way where, like, oh, we need a fake Santa. Let's, like, enlarge a robot fake Santa. Toy Santa.
Yes, but it also makes it feel like the Mrs. Claus portion is, like, so secretive, only the top two know, because otherwise, like, all these elves have been around here, so they knew there was a Mrs. Claus beforehand. They've obviously outlived at least one of the other Santas, so they probably had to go through this whole thing previously, too.
What if it's not about the Mrs. Claus portion? What if the elves are just so incredibly unmotivated that without direct supervision, they won't get work done?
And so instead they need an almost Nazi-like
Santa? They need a micromanager to stand there and hover over them.
Bernard and what's-his-bucket?
You can only have two managers, and they had to hire another manager. Bernard was the only manager previously, so clearly, like, the elves need management structure to their facility. And you can't just have your CEO take a whole year vacation. Looks bad on the company.
It's not even a year vacation. It's like 20 days. It's like, you guys can't last 20 days. No, if you guys know that, hey, he has to go find a Mrs. Claus.
Why would you not build that into your schedule?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Okay, but that's also, like, the most corporate thing I possibly could have said around the holiday season. So, like, okay, and again, this is a movie made and written for the children head to comprehend, which is why all of our questions have no answers. And, like, there's not even basic logic behind them, because other kids' movies have these questions, and someone has thought about it, right? So it's consistent.
Yeah.
Clearly this isn't a problem on the Santa Claus writing team, right? Because there's no questions that have answers, there's no answers that have questions, there's just nonsense happening constantly. And honestly, as a child, the way that my parents talked about work, I would assume that, like, workers need to be constantly managed, because the way they talk, they're like, oh man, another emergency happened today at work. I can't believe the printer ran out of ink. It took us 20 hours to fix. Like, and granted, like, I was a child. I did not understand, like, what was just like, man, I had a long day, should gripe a little bit, versus like, wow, my company's literally on fire, we had to bail it by hand.
Well, what is the mentality of these elves? Are they like toddlers, but they can handle advanced electronics?
They have to be a little more than that, because they had a whole secret service where every child in the last movie was an elf.
Exactly. Santa was kidnapped in the last movie.
By a very, like, compact and organized team.
Saved. He was kidnapped in the first arrested in the first one.
Thank you.
And they had a whole contingency plan in place.
True.
They don't have anything for this bullshit. It's such a stupid part of the movie that it's just like, and don't get me wrong, I do enjoy it a lot more because it is cool to see someone who sticks so close to the rules.
Yeah.
Like,
it was hilarious to see, like, the whole world become naughty. That was a very good, like, Christmas fun tagline. Because that honestly doesn't happen very often in a Christmas film.
Yeah.
Everyone's naughty? Really?
Well, and that's the thing, is like, he is lawfully neutral. He is the pure definition of lawfully neutral by their rules and regulations. He's going by the book. He's not doing it because he's mean. He's following it because that's what the rules of the North Pole are supposed to be followed.
Which does make the argument for the last Santa Claus maybe being just too strict.
Mm-hmm.
And Tim Allen's Santa Claus is just too lenient. That's why his sales have gone up. I don't know.
He started adding addendums to the Constitution of the North Pole.
I don't know if Tim Allen knows he can do that. He needs to. He needs to read his own contract because he keeps getting surprised by crap. There's a whole other movie he gets surprised by in.
I mean, he's had, about 8 years to a decade to
read and Bernard clearly knows the fine print.
Bernard just doesn't give a shit because it's not his job to know unless it affects him.
And Tim Allen can't figure out some form of payment or bribery to get Bernard to, sit him down and, bullet point it, or even give him the document and be like, by the way, you're gonna need this big-ass magnifying glass to read all the fine print.
Yeah, Bernard, here, you can handle this for a week. Do
Surely.
it.
Surely.
Curtis, you and Curtis can handle this for a week. Obviously, you've done it.
Yeah.
You, it's like talking to the guy who trained you to do your job. Remember, Bernard trained Tim out or Scott Calvin how to be Santa Claus.
I empathize with Bernard heavily.
When you train your boss and then you can't do your boss's job even though you trained him to do it.
Yes, and then your boss still can't make a PDF. Yeah. No, I empathize heavily with Bernard. I see it. I understand. Bernard's the best character in this movie.
Bernard's been at this for 800 years.
Yeah, Bernard's tired and needs a vacation.
But
also, I don't think he wants a vacation, because when he gets back, there'll be too many emails.
Yeah, they have a 3-month vacation. He talks about it at the end.
They have their own built-in vacation time.
Yeah, a 3-month honeymoon at the end.
Yeah, cute.
Yeah, we get less time off a year than a fictional Disney Santa.
Yeah, but they also are Santa, so...
And he still gets less time off than a medieval peasant.
That's unfortunate, but yeah.
Yeah. But, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Mm-hmm. The Toy Santa's a fun part of the movie. It gets a little bit sci-fi. It's kind of fun.
I like it. It plays off of the science, the, magic that the Santa Claus movie 1 introduced, where, he can make things grow, shrink, appear. This plays into this. I like it.
My other question about the Santa.
Yeah.
So when he becomes full Nazi Santa, for lack of a better term, dictator Santa.
Dictator Santa, yeah.
Although the black is very striking for... And also, at one point, I had to pause because the reindeer insignia on his hat is so low quality that it kind of looks like a lightning bolt. So I'm like, are you guys being a little too on the nose with this?
They went in hard, and I do not think it was intentional. I really don't.
No. I just
think that when you take Santa Claus and try and make him evil... You do just stray a little close to other already existing historical figures.
Yeah, no, it's not Star Wars Episode 7 where they wholeheartedly do the German rallies.
No, it's not that. It's not that level of on the nose, but accidentally close.
But also, the clothes.
Mm-hmm.
Was this just in his wardrobe, or did he steal this from another toy and enlarge it?
No one knows. It is not clear. I would like to think he stole it from, G.I. Joe sets and, enlarged it. But also, who is to say that Santa Claus magic can't change appearance? Because clearly he can de-Santify. They can de-Santify him.
This Santa doesn't have magic. He's just an enlarged toy.
He is just an enlarged toy, but he is running off of North Pole magic.
True. Or North Pole science, not... It never says it's magic, it says it's science.
That's true. This movie tries very hard to make the magic science so that way they don't have to explain everything to you.
Yeah. It's a soft magic system. It works because we need it to advance the plot.
Honestly, it does. And it's fun. Don't get me wrong. I know we're bitching a lot about it, but this movie is fun to watch.
Yeah.
It's just don't think about it. Don't question anything.
Yeah. And also, I mean, actually.
Yeah.
Makes a... Oh, man. It ties a little bit more into Nazi Germany.
Well, I mean, if you try hard enough, anything can tie back into it.
Well, he's also a coca addict.
Yeah.
Which is like the Nazis on meth back in the war.
But when your leader is hyped up on all the drugs because of his terrible tummy aches, and he had very farty belly, and he had headaches and toothaches, and half his face was kind of sort of paralyzed, along with one hand had the shakes. He was on a lot of drugs because he also had a fake doctor who just was like, I can inject you with stuff.
Yeah.
Caffeine pills. But No.
Caffeine laced with meth. That's exactly what this Santa is.
But I think they have once again taken Santa lore and just accidentally gotten too close to real history because Santa, again, is Coca-Cola property. I think it's just meant to be a, funny little nod to the idea that Santa isn't real. It's just Coca-Cola in disguise.
Yeah. I think in the next one they have Red Deer.
Yeah.
Which is
Red
Bull.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. It's a little too close to feel intentional. Or at least a little intentional.
It's so close that someone should have said something, but it did slip through the radar. Much like many a good logo.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do want to talk about Carol a little bit, because we've ignored her this entire talk. Because she's
honestly not important to the plot, despite being the main part of the movie.
Yeah, and I think that's part of the issue with this movie, too, is because it's divided between three things.
Mm-hmm.
Her just kind of showing up, she's the convenient love interest.
She's very convenient.
Same with Charlie having to go back because Charlie's on the naughty list.
And also, isn't it convenient that her and Charlie happen to be kind of in the same area?
Well, I mean, she's the principal.
I know, isn't that just super convenient?
Yeah.
He does not have to try at all.
No. Well, and
you know what would have made more sense is if he had to, actually make up with his ex-wife.
Yeah.
That would have been a much better, lesson to be learned. Or, I don't know. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad they didn't do the whole, he's having a hard time dating, because they think it's stupid. I don't like how movies do it. I don't think they ever get, a good, idea of how difficult dating can be, especially as an adult. But also, I'm just gonna date my son's principal feels way too stupid. Hallmark characters have to try harder than this.
No,
and their men fall in their laps, and some of them are brought to life by a scarf.
I'm not gonna fucking talk about that goddamn movie, but I will say, speaking of the magic, I do think there is. Real quick, I do appreciate that Santa has magic, or has MP like it's a goddamn JRPG.
I do too. I think it's hilarious, and I love that he uses all of it to impress her. And honestly, the way he impresses her is the most wasteful use of magic.
Yeah, it's all one big gamble, but that's why it has to work. And
yeah.
But that is the thing, is I do think she has more of a character than a lot of the other people in this movie.
She is more of a character than a lot of Mrs. Clauses in general. Most Mrs. Clauses are barely in the movie. Mm-hmm. She's not the best Mrs. Claus. That award definitely goes to the claymation Santa Claus movie, because she's a full character in that. Mm-hmm. This one's kind of weird because, again, she has to magically transform into Mrs. Claus, and if you think about that too long as an adult, it's upsetting. So, you don't think about it. And so she's just on screen just long enough to make her a person. She's
a reiteration of the point of the first movie, is that adults need to have a little magic in their life. I mean, look at the Christmas party. Yeah, I could have used a lot of booze, and kind of creepy with him pulling all the presents. And she's right about being that's kind of creepy that you had all this to begin with.
No, I'm 100% with her there. The other question I had was, so the idea of, the way he wins her over is he gives presents to everyone, but they're not the presents they currently want, and, only Santa would know. They're the presents that their childhood self wanted.
Because it's a playback on the last one with the weenie whistle and the dating game.
Which, I get, but also, again, if you were an adult thinking back on this, first off, I don't know if I can remember a Christmas gift that I wanted so badly and didn't get, that as an adult, if I randomly got it from a stranger, I would think it was Santa Claus's doing.
Well, that's just going to show that the last Santa Claus was bad at his job. He didn't give the kids what they wanted. Instead, they got
there's a whole generation of adults who just don't have their Christmas gifts?
Yes.
Also,
yes, look at the last group. He just gave an entire high school of teachers and faculty presents that they wanted from their childhood. Actually, that goes to show that the last Santa probably was really shitty at his job.
That's a good point. You have a good point there. However, again, these are people who probably could have, believed more in Santa if they, received, a gift card for, $2,000 to spend on their classrooms. To be here you go, you can improve your school, or, $1 billion.
Santa doesn't work in cash presents. He only does the material presents.
There's a lot of physical goods you can give a teacher that they would actually want.
They have games for their classrooms now.
Yeah, okay, that was the other thing, is, like, there was, like, I can understand having some, like, collectible thing as a child that I, like, remember that I wanted or I had, and I wish now as an adult because I'm now a collector of that thing, because I'm grown up and I look at that thing differently, right? But a lot of the childhood toys that, like, either because I truly did love it as a child or because my mother will not let me forget, I wanted desperately as a child. If I received the thing now as an adult, I would not think Santa Claus.
No.
I would think, wow, why do you have the crying baby doll that you can feed? Of course I wanted it as a child, but, like, this isn't rare or special or, like, significant to me because I'm no longer interested in baby dolls because I'm not 6.
Yeah. Well, I think that's just part of the issue with the structure of this movie is that it's not... While the first movie was about Scott Calvin and Charlie Calvin, that becomes relegated to more of a side plot. And even the main plot of him trying to find his wife is probably only about 15 minutes of the movie, I'd say. Whereas the rest of it is dealing with Nazi Santa in the North Pole.
Okay, here's the real, like, letdown. Granted, the charm is still there for this movie. This movie is still very charming. The acting is still wonderful. The music is exactly the same as the first one, so honestly, it was pretty good. The writing of the first one was for adults to find Christmas. The writing of the second one was to entertain children with Christmas.
Mm-hmm. And try and play on the nostalgia of a movie that came out, almost a decade before this?
Uh-huh, yeah. Like, it was long enough.
94 to 2002, so yeah, almost a decade.
Almost a decade. Whereas the jump between this silly one and the third silly one, 2002 to 2006, it felt like a much more natural jump as far as, like, when movies released. So yeah, the third one's bad, but, like, we enjoyed it, we watched it because the second one was kind of bad. I think if these had been closer together, I think more people would have been more upset with Santa Claus 2.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I mean, it gave enough time for the kids who watched it to grow up to be, or not fully to grow up, because, let's see, I would have been 13, 14, probably getting closer to Charlie's age.
Yeah, and I mean, like, again, it's not bad writing, but it lacks the, like, adult focus that the first one had, which made the first one, I think, honestly, a classic for most people.
And gave it its heart, because, I mean, that's really what it was about a father and son bonding. The Santa Claus was just it was a small portion to make Scott Calvin realize he kind of was a shitty father. Yeah,
and honestly, he didn't really improve as a father.
No.
His son has a SOS button.
This one, he didn't really even improve as a father.
No, he didn't.
He just has, like, that one heart-to-heart moment with Charlie of, like, yes, I do really love your principal. And then they only talk, like, maybe 2 or 3 times the entire movie.
They really need to have Charlie just move to the North Pole. That would have been the best solution.
Or at least let him go up, like, on his summer vacation or spring break of, like, hey, sorry, guys, I can't do it. Hell, Bleach has a better explanation of Ichigo going on spring break. School?
Yeah.
Or no, why he's going to the Soul Society. No one's gonna miss him because he went out of town on their summer vacation.
Honestly, yeah, that's a better excuse than literally anything in this movie. Yeah. Granted, this movie is fun. I'm not saying that it's not worth watching. Honestly, at this point, most of the Santa Claus movies comes in a box set. Watch all 3. You're not gonna be mad.
So then, rent, buy, stream, or decline that we ever watched Santa Claus 2, despite having an audio recording of us watching it.
I'd like to preface my statement with the fact that, again, I am a Tim Allen hater.
I know.
I would watch this if it was on ABC Christmas lineup.
Disney.
It's now on Disney's lineup.
Yep.
I do think it used to be on ABC's lineup of, like, the 12 Days of Christmas.
It might be because Disney didn't have, like, their dedicated channel outside of Disney Channel.
And I grew up on, like, the TV, not streaming, so, like, I think when it was on TV, I did watch both Santa Claus 1 and Santa Claus 2 when they were on the television for Christmas. I don't hate it that much. Great. Am I going to buy it? No. But if you are someone who loves the first one, just buy the box set that has all 3 of them. Because that one at least also comes with, like, some interviews and stuff, which I did listen to. They're not great, but they're fine. And if you love Tim Allen and you like these movies, they'll be entertaining.
Yeah, I'm in a little bit of an in-between spot. One, there is still a little bit of the nostalgia factor for me, because
Sure.
I still find this movie entertaining despite the fat reindeer and Curtis being absolutely obnoxious to me now.
Understand.
And Chet, who gets a bigger part in the next movie.
Yeah, unfortunately.
And so I think it's definitely worth a stream just to see how they tried to jump forward in time and make a compelling point for there being a Mrs. Claus.
True.
And I'm a maybe buy. Because, I mean, it is a relatively solid sequel, though. Like, that's the thing is...
It's not that bad. We bitch about it, but remember, this is a Christmas movie's Christmas sequel.
Well, and it's a unique Santa Claus story. I mean, it does something interesting.
It truly is a unique Santa Claus story, and as someone who has constantly been annoyed by the fact that Mrs. Claus is barely in most Christmas movies, even though the fact that she's, like, kind of necessary if you're going to decorate with the salt and pepper shakers, she's at least in this one. Granted, it's not my favorite portrayal, and she's not in it a lot, but she's in it so much more than almost all Christmas movies.
Yeah, most of the Mrs. Claus is just a background character.
Who maybe sometimes brings Santa cookies.
Yeah, or has a line.
Yeah. Like, this one is at least in the movie, she has a real personality. I have a lot of questions about her feelings about being turned into Mrs. Claus, but, you know, we don't get to know.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's not that bad of a sequel. It's just, A, I hate Tim Allen, and B... I mean...
And I'm the opposite of you. Like, if I don't like someone, I still watch what they're in.
Sure.
So,
I get it.
But, yeah. No, I'm glad we decided to do this to kick off the holiday season, though.
I won't lie. I watched this right after I got done putting up my Christmas decorations, and it did really kick off the Christmas vibes and spirits. It is a good, like, one of the lineup to watch.
Yeah. No, I definitely agree. It's much better than some of the other Christmas movies I have on my list, unfortunately, because of the rom-coms.
Oh, the rom-coms gotten real rough this year. I'm so sorry.
They weren't great to begin with, but
They're going downhill, and boy, downhill didn't have a whole lot of down left to go.
Yeah, so, but I'm definitely looking forward to our only deep dive of the holiday season. Something that, like Santa Claus 3, will make you want to wish your family away. Haha. But anyway, this has been the Good, the Bad, and the Weird MicroViews.
Thanks for listening.
Peace. Thank you for stopping by this here town of the Good, the Bad, and the Weird. We appreciate your listenership, and if you want more of our takes in your life, feel free to check us out on social media at the Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, or TGTBTW for short. As well, if we missed a fact, your favorite part of a movie, or just have a suggestion and want to reach out and say howdy, feel free to email us at tgtbtwpodcast@gmail.com. And feel free to join our Discord at The Good, the Bad, and the Weird Podcast, where we talk about movies, just share random banter here and there. And always, check out our podcasters, streamers, or any other content creator we shout out in our episodes. We really appreciate it. And as always, thank you for listening. Peace.